Welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and we are so glad to have you here. We are just days away from Election Day, and all eyes are on New Jersey's race for governor, a contest that's shaping up to be one of the closest we've seen. It is anyone's game. The general election is Tuesday, November 4th, when voters will choose a successor to Governor Phil Murphy. Early in-person voting got underway last weekend, giving voters a head start on casting their ballots. Democrat Micah Sherrill, the U.S. Congresswoman from the 11th District, is also a former Navy helicopter pilot. Sherrill won her party's nomination back in June with 34% of the vote in a crowded primary field of 6 candidates that included Newark Mayor Ros Baraka and Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop. She's campaigning on lowering the cost of living, expanding affordable housing, and protecting key Democratic priorities like education funding, reproductive rights, while vowing to stand up to any federal overreach from Washington. Republican Jack Ciattarelli is a former state assemblyman from Somerset County who narrowly lost to Murphy in 2021. Ciattarelli won his primary with nearly 68% of the vote over talk radio host Bill Spadea, positioning himself as the most pro-business candidate in the race. His campaign is focused on slashing property taxes, boosting economic growth through deregulation, and making New Jersey more affordable for families and seniors, promising to roll back what he calls excessive state spending. The latest Rutgers-Eagleton poll shows Sherrill with a slim 5-point edge among likely voters, 50 to 45%. That's well within the margin of error. Half of New Jerseyans say President Trump's influence is a major factor here, with Republicans hoping for gains among Black and Latino voters amid national GOP momentum. The two squared off in 2 recent debates, clashing over everything from federal shutdown to military records and skyrocketing utility bills. New Jersey hasn't gone Republican in a statewide race since 2013, but recent polls suggest this could buck the blue trend. Turnout is going to be key in this off-year election, especially with no presidential race on the ballot. Sherrill is drawing some serious star power from the Democratic big leagues, including former President Barack Obama and former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. We caught up with Micah Sherrill on the campaign trail where Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro was there to lend his support.
Someone asked me, like, why are you going to Jersey, right? You got stuff to do in PA. Well, I do have a lot of stuff to do in PA, and I'm focused on that too. But you know why I'm here? Not just because of how great Mikie is, but I think we all understand this in life. It matters who your neighbor is, right? It matters who your neighbor is.
I'm going to freeze those rate hikes on day one by declaring a state of emergency. We're going to cut through red tape and permitting delays, saving you time and money. I'm going to make sure to expand that first-time homebuyers programs so people can get a foot in the door, build their family's wealth. But at the same time, I'm going to take on those landlords who are colluding to drive up rental prices. And as I'm trying to lower costs, we see a tariff program. I call it a worldwide extortion racket. Because as you pay more from everything from your cup of coffee to the groceries you buy, President Trump and his family have pocketed billions.
We also caught up with Republican candidate Jack Ciattarelli in Camden County, where he stopped to rally with the voters. Ciattarelli has been crisscrossing the state now for months.
Executive order number 1 on day 1. No town in this state will be a sanctuary city. We will not be a sanctuary state. We're not going to encourage immigration or make the job of local law enforcement harder. We're getting rid of that policy. Executive order number 2, we're bringing back to work all of our state workers. Have you tried getting somebody on the phone? Have you tried getting your issue resolved? You know what really bugs me as a proud New Jerseyan? You can walk into a DMV office tomorrow in Florida and walk out an hour later with your real ID. I heard that. Call DMV in New Jersey for your real ID. They're giving you an appointment in January. It's unacceptable. We're bringing these people back to work. You pay their salary, and I'll make sure the state government works for you. We're going to fix that. Also on day 1. On day 1, you get an attorney general that supports both police and parents here in the state of New Jersey. I promise you. What does that mean for our police? We got to get rid of cashless bail. Cashless bail has created a professional criminal who's learned how to game the system. And how is my attorney general going to support parents? We're getting rid of policy 5756.
A reminder, early voting is underway across New Jersey, giving residents days to cast their ballots ahead of Election Day. Voters can head to any of the state's 254 early voting locations through Sunday, November 2nd. Polls are open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. this weekend. Now, election officials are urging voters to double-check their county locations and bring a valid ID if requested. Turnout is expected to be strong this year, especially with local races and school board contests also on the ballot. Coming up next, Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics, is here for a look at early voting and the impact it is having so far on the election.
We vote to protect the Social Security we worked hard for. We vote because family caregivers deserve support. We vote to have a say in our future. For all the reasons why, AARP has information about when, where, and how to vote. Find the information you need to make your voice heard.
At AmeriHealth, we understand what's important to you. It's why we offer some of the lowest cost health plans in New Jersey, with access to one of the state's largest networks of doctors and hospitals. Plus, with free 24/7 virtual care, you can see a doctor anytime and anywhere. And we're committed to giving back to help make a difference in our communities. Learn more at AmeriHealth.com. A health plan for everyone.
Hey New Jersey, want to choose how you live as you age? Tune into AARP New Jersey's new show, The Power of Us, the show that celebrates aging with dignity, purpose, and joy. From protecting yourself against fraud, to staying healthy and aging in place, to finding purpose through volunteering, we've got the tools, tips, and stories to help you thrive. Join us on ONNJ and discover the power of us.
Welcome back to New Jersey Politics. Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University, is my guest. He's here now to talk about what else? Election Day in New Jersey. Micah, it's good to see you.
You too, Laura, as always. I don't know what election this marks, so we've been with each other comparing notes, but it's a lot, right?
Many, right? And, you know, we've been doing debates together, talking about these candidates, and it's hard to believe it's here, yet it also seems like, okay, we're ready to get a decision. Early voting.
Bring it on.
Right, bring it.
Yep.
Let's bring it. So early voting kicked off last weekend. It runs through this weekend. So let's just talk a little bit about that. There are so many ways to vote, to get engaged. But this isn't a presidential election year. It is a gubernatorial election. Let's talk about how New Jersey's looking as far as turnout go, and how that is going to be, how that sways, maybe one works for one party or the other.
Okay, so we have three methods of voting in the state: voting by mail, which started several weeks ago, getting returns. We have the in-person early vote. As you mentioned, we are in the middle of that. It will wrap up the Sunday before the election. And then we have Election Day voting, and it's all the above. The voting by mail is heavily favoring Democrats. We've got probably, by the time we get to Election Day, 250,000 vote lead. More Democrats returning mail-in ballots than Republicans. It could be more than that. It could be 275,000 because they're running ahead of their margin from 4 years ago. That's a formidable bank of votes that Republicans have to overcome. They can do it in this in-person early voting, but so far we've seen that a lot of Republicans are voting in-person early. They like that method. They like the machines. They were hoping to gain some ground. So far anyway, Democrats, just as many Democrats are voting in person early, and neither side has a pronounced advantage. As we sit here, maybe about 4,000 or 5,000 more Democrats than Republicans. It's been really neat to see the two titans of the state slugging it back and forth. The Hudson County Democrats are knocking it out because of their Jersey City mayoral race and Brian Stack just driving out every vote there in person early, but also the Ocean County Republicans. You've got the Lakewood community, you've got the MAGA community, and these two titans are sort of slugging it out. Every day they're knocking it out, and neither side is getting a pronounced advantage over the other in the net impact across the state. It's about even. So Republicans have not made up the ground there. What that is all leading us to, they've got to have a really big election day.
Right. And, when you're talking about Hudson County, Ocean County, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, what about all those undeclared, undecided, independent voters in New Jersey? How can you talk a little bit about the significance of the sheer numbers in New Jersey of that and how both parties are approaching getting those votes?
Yeah, so the unaffiliated voters matter a lot. But here's the situation. In an off-year election, it's not the presidential year, they are slower to engage, they're slower to decide, they're waiting a little bit longer to make up their minds. Some of them are not as interested as they are in a presidential year, so we'll get less of them. But they are pivotal here because, particularly, think about Republicans. Republicans are the smaller party in this state. They can't win with just Republicans. There are 850,000 more Democrats. And so if Republicans are going to win statewide, they have to win a lion's share of the unaffiliated vote besides just the Republican vote. And they can do that. They did that with Jack Ciattarelli in 2021. They won the unaffiliated vote. They did that in 2024 with Donald Trump. The big question in my mind is, in those years, Republicans were running against an unpopular Biden White House. Right now, Republicans are defending an unpopular Trump White House. And I think that has a big impact on what's on unaffiliated voters' minds and how they might be voting. What we've seen in the public polling so far, only one measure, is that you could see some polls that are showing that Mikie Sherrill has something of an advantage. Maybe let's call it 5 to 10 points on the unaffiliated vote. Other polls are showing that Jack Ciattarelli has an advantage in the unaffiliated vote. But here's the key. They are weak advantages. Neither party has a pronounced advantage. They're somewhat evenly split. And I think that Republicans need a bigger share to get some traction on the Democrats statewide. And we just don't know how they're going to break. Again, the evidence so far, they're not breaking hard from one side or the other.
Yeah, and you talk about the impact of the national landscape here in the state. Both campaigns, they're in overdrive. You've got Jack Ciattarelli. He's really trying to position himself as pro-business, messaging. Mikie Sherrill is hammering away with affordability and women's rights. We've got the debates are behind us. We've got ads flooding the airwaves. Can you talk a little bit about, what each side needs to do as this campaign is entering the final 48, 72 hours? What are the smartest last-minute moves each side needs to make to mobilize not just their base, but get those independents before the polls close on the 4th?
Yeah. We're probably done with the persuasion part of the campaign, although campaigns still need to do that. They still need to persuade the voters who are undecided. But at this point, that's not really what the advertising is doing. What the advertising is doing right now is trying to drive out that vote, trying to turn out those votes. And I think what the Sherrill campaign did pretty early on that has turned out to be pretty smart in retrospect, we didn't necessarily give credit for it at the time or see it at the time, is she boxed Ciattarelli out of that affordability argument, or at least she boxed her way toward getting a commanding presence in that affordability argument. What do I mean by that? High tax Jack, right or wrong, fair or unfair? She ran to the right of him on taxes, on the electricity prices. I'm going to freeze those prices. So she got a piece of that affordability argument that otherwise would have been used as a club against the Democrat. Higher taxes, right? So she really did a good job of, by running to the right of him on those issues, she got a good impact on a good wedge, a good part of that vote, or of that issue, the persuasion on that issue. Ciattarelli has tried to make other things the issue, and I think he maybe took it for granted a little bit that he would get the winning edge on affordability, on taxes, on electric prices, and he didn't fight her as much early on about that, and so I think he lost a piece of that advantage. It's not that he isn't getting votes out of that, but I think he lost the commanding advantage that he might have otherwise had, or other Republicans like to have over Democrats on that issue of affordability. And so at this point, he's got to find a way to close with those undecided, unaffiliated voters that he really needs to get over the top with her.
When you're looking at the race for governor, there are only two in the country going on right now: New Jersey's race for governor and Virginia's race for governor. But being in the area that we are in, we are still in the shadow of the New York and Philadelphia market. No major races going on in Philadelphia, but in New York, everything is all about the mayor's race there. How is that media attention? Is it drawing away? Is that adding? How is that impacting New Jersey's race for governor? Are voters being distracted, or are they being influenced by what's happening in New York City, being far more Democratic than it is, because than it is Republican?
I think so. I mean, this mayoral race in New York is an open question, and it's been drawing a lot of attention between Mamdani and Cuomo and Sliwa. There's been a lot of coverage of the ups and the downs and the ins and the outs on that race. And it's been probably the biggest election story in the metropolitan area this year. That means we don't get as much attention. You're absolutely right about that. Less so in the Philadelphia media market, where there hasn't been that other distraction. New Jersey, once again, we're in this lower information environment. It's harder to find New Jersey news than it's ever been. There are less reporters who are covering it than ever. So I think the campaigns have had to respond to that. They have had to go more surface level with people's understanding, not assume that people know what's going on. And I think some of I'm sorry to say it, the distortions on both sides and the half-truths and taking one statement and completely twisting it out of its original meaning, we're seeing a lot more of that this time. I don't think it's an accident that we're operating in this lower information environment right now. Yeah. You're absolutely right when you say, though, that this year, New Jersey and Virginia, we are the story statewide. And going into next year, which side has the advantage going into Trump's midterm year? Democrats are going to feel like they're on the offense, and they've won all the races this year, and they had a run at the both governors and the mayoral race and the California ballot proposition. Or Republicans feel like they've got the wind at their back going into the midterm. So a lot of momentum going into next year rides on what happens next week.
And another interesting factor in New Jersey, when you look at the trends, we've had a Democratic governor now for the past 8 years. Typically, it kind of sways back to Republican. Going back to, I'm going to say, is it the 50s?
The 60s.
The 60s. Yeah. The 60s since we've had.
No, 50s and 60s. You're absolutely right. 60s. Governor Minor had 2 terms, and then Governor Hughes had 2 terms. It's the only time in the entire period when governors could succeed themselves. It's the only time that's happened. Every other time, one party gets a turn, the other party gets a turn. Nobody has more than 2 terms.
But this being New Jersey, it's still very much anyone's game. So Republicans cannot really rest on those laurels. And, so when you look at the national trends and then the past trends in New Jersey, and then looking at the last election, Jack Ciattarelli came so close to beating Phil Murphy. And now you have President Barack Obama coming in to campaign with Mikie Sherrill. You've had President Trump doing tele-rallies with Jack Ciattarelli. So can you just talk just a little bit about that and, how these trends, just talk a little bit about the trends and how much of a factor they could be or they may not be this time around?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right that both parties see a lot riding on this election. Both parties have national figures who are coming in, who are trying to do their part. Congressional leaders, other governors are really stepping in, rallying with the candidates, doing what they can to motivate turnout, to drive votes. Look, this is New Jersey. We've seen and we've heard Jack Ciattarelli for 10 years now. We've seen Mikie Sherrill. bring us somebody new, bring us somebody interesting, somebody different to hear from, and somebody who we might watch on the news on a daily basis. And so I think there's a novelty to that. I think party faithful Republicans are interested in hearing other Republicans, and Democrats are hearing from other Democrats. I think Obama has the potential to drive turnout in the city of Newark, which is what how he's being used in this election to try and help motivate voters to come out. You're absolutely right that a lot is riding on this election, and nationally, a lot of for both parties are getting involved. I would say this as far as the trends. I think some things are looking good for the Democrats as far as the early vote, but I certainly, given all of the analysis that we've just talked about, in no part of that do I think that Ciattarelli is down and out. No part do I think that he doesn't have a shot. I think this is a race, if you believe the latest polls, and we're within 5 points, this is a race that either side can still win. And that's also what has motivated so much national interest, is that definitely there's a sense that either party could win this race.
Right. And who knows, on election night, we may not know. It could be that close. We hope that we certainly hope that we know.
Let me give you 2 cents. Let me give you 2 cents there, Laura.
Okay.
Why I don't think we're going to be in that same situation
Okay.
as 4 years ago, why it took us so long. We have a new law on counting the votes. We have a new law that allows the vote by mail to be prepared 5 days in advance, to be ready when you hit that tabulate button. I think the count's going to be a lot faster this time. And I'm just, that's one prediction I'll safely make, I think, is that we're probably not, I hope, going to wait days. If it's that close, if it's 1,700 votes as we had in 1981, all bets are off. But in general, I think the numbers are going to come in pretty quickly. We have new laws in the place that help us count those votes quickly.
So that was a question that we were having here in the studio. Those people who have early voted, are they being tabulated right now? I mean, or are they just being counted? At what point are you allowed to say, okay, this many has gone to Mikie Sherrill, this many have gone to Jack Ciattarelli, this many have been a write-in candidate?
It's a great question, and it's always really important to note that nobody knows how those votes have been cast yet. Not election officials, not anybody. When we say Democrats have an advantage, what we mean is we know how many ballots have been returned by Democrats. We know how many ballots have been returned by Republicans. We don't know how they've been cast. We don't know who's cast what ballot yet. They will be prepared. Envelopes will be opened, fed into the machine, prepared. You don't hit the tabulate button by law. You don't hit the count button until 8 o'clock on Tuesday night. So that is what is supposed to happen by law. That is what will happen by law. But the law that allows us to count faster allows us to get those ballots ready to count so that we don't have any delay and we can just immediately go right into counting starting at when the polls close on Tuesday night.
Yeah, and just final thoughts. We also have legislative races. We have mayoral races. We have school board. There are other races going on that aren't that we just don't have time to get to. But just final thoughts as the campaigns again are entering that final mile, that final stretch of this campaign. What are your thoughts?
So 4 years ago, when Jack Ciattarelli ran for governor, he came within 84,000 votes of beating the incumbent governor, Phil Murphy. You wouldn't think about that as a coattail situation. However, he ran strongly enough in particular parts of the state that he brought 6 state legislators with him, flipped from Democrat to Republican. Now, 2 years later in 2023, those seats, or different seats, different numbers, flipped back to the Democrats. And so we're going to be looking on Tuesday to see there are races in Gloucester County and in Burlington County and in Cumberland and Salem County. There are certainly races that could change hands. There are certainly assembly seats that could change hands. The complexion of the legislature could change a little bit. It's only on the assembly side. Senate's not up until 2 years from now, but we could certainly see some changes. The Democratic vote is strong enough, the number of assembly seats is strong enough. We're not going to see a change in control this year, but they could start to eat away at the Democratic margin.
Micah Rasmussen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Always a pleasure to see you.
You too.
And that'll do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.
We vote to protect the Social Security we worked hard for. We vote because family caregivers deserve support. We vote to have a say in our future. For all the reasons why, AARP has information about when, where, and how to vote. Find the information you need to make your voice heard.
At AmeriHealth, we understand what's important to you. It's why we offer some of the lowest cost health plans in New Jersey, with access to one of the state's largest networks of doctors and hospitals. Plus, with free 24/7 virtual care, you can see a doctor anytime and anywhere. And we're committed to giving back to help make a difference in our communities. Learn more at AmeriHealth.com. A health plan for everyone.
Hey, New Jersey, want to choose how you live as you age? Tune into AARP New Jersey's new show, The Power of Us, the show that celebrates aging with dignity, purpose, and joy. From protecting yourself against fraud, to staying healthy and aging in place, to finding purpose through volunteering, we've got the tools, tips, and stories to help you thrive. Join us on ONNJ and discover the power of us.